Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, we have something extra, extra special for you. Tonight, on Kidney Stories 2, our guest is Leesa Thompson. Leesa is both a kidney transplant recipient and one terrific kidney advocate. Her kidney story is particularly fascinating. In 2008, at the age of 18, her kidneys failed as a result of a medical mishap of prescribing ibuprofen, for a knee injury. Her kidneys began to fail. Her official diagnosis was chronic acute pyelonephritis. I think I got that right. By February of 2018, Leesa was told she either needed to go on dialysis or get a kidney transplant because of prior health problems. Peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis were not right for Leesa because of her health. She made a very, very brave decision to only accept a preemptive kidney transplant from a living donor. By February 23rd, 2018, she posted her need for a living kidney donor on social media for the very first time. Her friend Ellis Mirsky, current VP and member of the board of directors at the National Kidney Donation Organization, on March 4th, put up a website on her behalf publicizing her need for a living kidney donor. Between May 11th and July of 2018, that website received a phenomenal 32,600 plus views. A donor came forward. His name was Ed Halowinko. He came forward to donate to Leesa, but their blood types were not compatible for a transplant. So the parties went through a paired donation donor swap exchange. Ed's kidney was removed on Leesa's behalf and sent to Boston. In exchange, Leesa received a kidney from Carrie Tanner McConnell at New York Presbyterian Well Cornell Hospital on October the 10th, 2018. To date, the transplant has been successful. Leesa has been very, very grateful in her second opportunity in life, and unlike many others, didn't just disappear after the transplant, but gave back. Leesa has become a very active and engaged kidney advocate for the National Kidney Registry, the National Donor Organization, Toastmasters, a project that she's pushing on her own, and on Facebook. She now helps others find their kidney matches. She hopes to write a book someday about her experiences. Please give a warm welcome to Leesa Thompson. Start the show, Jared. Hello, Leesa. How are you?
Hi, Jim. I'm well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad you're here. Did I correctly state the information in the introduction about your background? I mean, except for butchering the name of your diagnosis. Did I get everything else right?
Some of it was right. I was diagnosed with chronic acute pyelonephritis when I was 18. And
Okay.
I'm 65 now, so we're talking some 50 years ago. And it was okay. I was in and out of the hospital at 18 on IV therapy, mostly Keflin, and I'd go home to my boyfriend and end up back in the hospital. So instead of getting a honeymoon cystitis, I was getting full-blown kidney issues. And I'd go home and we'd enjoy being together, and I'd end up right back in the hospital. So
okay. Tell us a little bit about your education and employment experiences up to the present.
Right. So at that time, I was in college, and I got 2 degrees as an undergraduate, one in psychology and one in speech pathology. And those were issued from Boston University. And then I went to Ohio State for my master's, and I spent 40 years working as a speech pathologist, mostly in early intervention and with preschoolers, and predominantly in bilingual households, although my Spanish is not as good as it could be. And then in 2018, after 40 years of work, the rest of what you told was accurate. I found myself needing a kidney or dialysis. I had had two children, one's a chiropractor, one's an actor, and I had had two C-sections. So after the second C-section, I herniated. So that made it difficult to consider doing PD. I also had a herniation from doing some extensive yoga. I had done this wonderful posture, and that caused a second hernia. And
Okay.
so
Talk to us a little bit about the circumstances that led to your diagnosis at the age of 18. How was it that you ended up in a hospital and ended up being diagnosed?
right, so I would end up with 108-degree temperature, and of course I had all the things that went along with that, nausea and shaking, and I'd end up right back. And they did IVPs, which probably at this point would never have been done, but at that point they saw tubular blunting, and they kept me on a number of drugs. I was allergic to sulfur, but they had me on trimethoprim, which is Bactrim without sulfur. And yeah, that's what their diagnosis was chronic acute pyelonephritis.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the situation with your knee injury.
So that
It's
was
my
in
understanding that they
2008.
gave you bad medication.
It was 2008, and I was playing with one of my students, one of the 2-year-olds that I had. We were running around in the backyard, and I stepped into a hole, and my knee went out, and I really wanted to travel. And so they wanted to put me on a number of different drugs, which they realized they couldn't because of my history with um, with my kidney infections. And so they ended up saying, why don't you just take Advil? And I traveled on the Advil. And after 2 or 3 doses, I ended up in the hospital on dialysis with comatose and convulsions. And I was in California because I had made it there, but I didn't make it there really well.
Okay.
And so after the dialysis, I was on dialysis for 10 days. I came home, and of course, my kidneys needed further attention. I was seeing a nephrologist, and they maintained me for 10 years. And then in 2018, I necessitated either dialysis or the transplant.
Right. That's what I wanted to ask you about. You were told in February of 2018 that you would need either a transplant or to go on dialysis. And I had read that you had problems or complications doing both. Can you explain what those problems or complications were?
Right, that's a great question. So I went to see a vascular surgeon, and they said that my veins were not going to be good enough in my left arm, and they typically don't like to use the dominant arm anyway. And I had had a mastectomy in 2005, and you're not supposed to do anything on the arm of the side where the mastectomy is. So that was my right side. And they just said this was really not going to work. They considered cutting horizontally and then the full length vertically, horizontally across the middle of my arm and vertically up to the top. But they said that the likeliness of having that vein ever mature was really probably not going to happen. And they didn't know what to do because the left arm didn't have good veins. The right arm was out of the question, and PD was not going to be a good option. And so they said that the best thing to do was to find a living kidney donor. And I put that, I put a brief question on Facebook and said, you know, does anyone have a suggestion? I really can't do either. Dialysis, and I don't know how to find a living kidney donor. Please help.
Right. I have a note, February 23rd, 2018, you posted your first request for a kidney for a living donor on Facebook. And by the way, that choice that you made, living donor preemptive transplant, that took guts. I just have to tell you that as your friend, that really took some intestinal fortitude to make that choice. Can you explain why you made that choice?
Right. So my friend Seth Davis had gone to school with Ellis Mirsky. They went to law school together. And Seth saw my post and came on Facebook and said, call me. And so I called Seth, and he explained to me that Ellis had gotten his kidney preemptively with a living kidney donor 6 months prior in July from Sherry Ruane. And so Ellis coached me through reframing my poor me into why my life was worth saving. And I believed that my life was worth saving because I'm a speech pathologist and an environmental advocate and activist. And I with Ellis's help, we put a website together, which you correctly said was released March 4th. It was ready, but we didn't launch it until May 11th. But all the way through of being evaluated and going through the difficult tests, Ellis kept saying, you're going to find this kidney. I have faith. Don't worry. Don't do anything, to set up for dialysis, which you're really not going to do well on. Just have faith and believe and make this your full-time commitment, your full-time job, and we're going to get through this. And I kept saying, well, what if? And they kept saying, well, if we get to the point where your numbers are such, then, maybe you'll end up with a shunt in your neck or a port in your chest, but you can't even go there right now. Right now, your job is to find a living kidney.
Right. It's my understanding that you were evaluated at New York Press Well Cornell, March 26th of 2018.
Right.
Is that correct? And just so our audience knows, the link to Well Cornell's kidney services, kidney pancreas transplant, adult kidney transportation, that's all in the comments. So many of the other links that Leesa and I are going to talk about tonight were posted in the comments. So if people have an interest in that, they can find it. Ellis Mirsky, you mentioned him. He has a heck of a track record getting people living donors. I thought I read somewhere 27 out of 35 of his people, including you, got living donors. Is that correct?
Deceased. 2 of those got deceased kidneys, and the other 25 out of 35 got living kidneys.
Okay. Can you tell us what's his relationship with NKDO and NKR?
Right. So his relationship at this point with NKR is minimal. And with NKDO, he's vice president of their board and very active and does all their legal work and is helping to make NKDO a wonderful, wonderful place for people to work as donor mentors.
Okay. You mentioned your website that was put up on kidneyadvocate.com, Kidney for Leesa blogspot.
Right.
Just an excellent description of your circumstance and your request that people share your story rather than just asking for a kidney donation. And that link, by the way, is also in the comments. Between the period of May 11th.
About kidneyadvocate.com now that you mentioned it?
Yeah.
Okay, so kidneyadvocate.com is a teaching tool, and it's a collection of resources. And as a microsite coach, a full-time microsite coach with NKR, the first thing I do as a coach is to walk people through kidneyadvocate.com. I can pretty much do it in my sleep. And I can tell you what each of the boxes are. And we look at what it is that the transplant center that they are at offers. So the first thing we want to know is, does their transplant center offer a microsite? Because if their transplant center is one of the 35 of the 100 NKR affiliated sites out of the 250 transplant sites, then I can coach them. Theoretically,
Okay.
otherwise I cannot.
I promise we're going to get to your role with NKR and KDO. Tell us a little bit about this period of time between May 11th and the end of July, the 32,600 views that this
that's pretty
website got.
amazing.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, so I have.
I'll tell you right now, Jared and I killed to get that many views on one of our broadcasts.
Yeah,
How do you count it?
It was pretty amazing. I've been very active, like I said, as a speech pathologist, and with my temple, and with the environmental activist groups that I've been part of. So I really give a lot of credit to Clearwater that runs a 106-foot sloop. They own and operate. It's member owned and operated, and the people that I know through Clearwater clearly had a lot to do with how I got so many views. The other thing is that Michael Turton is a wonderful friend of mine, and he's a journalist. And so he came to an event that I was doing a lot of tabling. So I would sit at a table, I would tell my story both at Clearwater and also at the Beacon Sloop Club. And Michael came to the Beacon Sloop Club in June and did a newspaper story on me. And subsequent to that, he did two others. One, a couple of days after my transplant, where he came and visited Ed and I and Dr. Watkins, who was my surgeon at NYP Weill Cornell. And then his third, of course, was when we met Carrie 18 months later. And his first story really gets a lot of credit for helping to get so many views. There was also a woman, Sonia, who does a local magazine. You missed that one someplace. Right? You can't get them all. There was a magazine that did a several-page spread on me talking about the advocacy work I had done as an environmentalist and how I really wanted to do the 50th Earth Day event in 2020, and how I had done the Earth Day event in 1990, where we had 30,000 people at a state park locally, and the governor called us and insisted on being there. And so that spread really got a lot of traction. It was local, and it got everybody excited about the work that I had done to that point. And a lot of those people came forward. And I was constantly on Facebook. And I also grew up going to this wonderful YMCA camp called Frost Valley. When I was a kid, it was way yonder, but now it's called Frost Valley. It's up in the Catskills. And I called them and I said, I'm an alumni. I went to camp there. We went to family weekends and family camps, and my kids were campers during their summer residential programs. I said, could you please help me by doing a story and telling about how I've really valued being part of your camp, and I'm an alumni. And they did an alumni spotlight on me. So I think that the more press that I was able to get, and I did a couple of radio spots, and I just kept crashing Facebook. I would message every single person. And the final thing that really worked, and I've heard this work so many times so well, is my partner sent out an email blast, and every single person got a note. And Ed called him and he said, if this is for real, count me in. I want to give my kidney.
Okay. You've mentioned the name Ed a couple of times. As a result of your efforts, one of the donors that came forward was Ed Holowinkle from Norfolk, Connecticut. Now, it's my understanding that your blood types did not match. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I'm sorry. He's from Norwalk, Connecticut, and I missed your question.
Okay. You had different blood types. You're a B positive, right? Ed's an A positive?
The other way around.
Okay.
Ed is B positive.
Ed's a B, you're an A positive. And can you tell us how you overcame that?
B positive is rare. So that was highly wanted. So Ed tested at NYP Weill Cornell, and he was helped extensively by Renewal. And Renewal is based out of Brooklyn, and they're a fabulous organization that really takes good care of donors. So they come into the hospital on the day that the donor is being evaluated, and they do a lot of hand holding. And they also were there when he came in to check in to donate, and also they stayed during the surgery. They were there for him immediately afterwards. They gave him this wonderful package of a robe and a blanket, and they paid for hotels for his wife. They were fabulous. And so Ed's kidney went to Boston, and my kidney came from Kerry out of UCLA, and that was all set up through what we were told at the time was paired exchange, but it was really a chain, because Kerry's went to me, Ed's went to Boston, and we believe the 2 additional people got kidneys from this chain as well. And we weren't given a lot of other information on exactly where they were, but we think one was in Seattle and one was back at UCLA.
Okay. I have the date of your transplant as October 9th or 10th.
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 Kerry's was the 9th, and Ed's and mine were the 10th.
Okay. Dr. Anthony Watkins was your transplant surgeon at Cornell, right?
Right, and now he's at NYU.
Okay. And this all occurred less than 8 months after you put out your first request. Is that also correct?
Yes.
Wow. All right, let's talk a little bit about this lady from California, because I've heard her name referred to a couple of different ways. Carrie Tanner, and I've heard you talk about Carrie McConnell. Is this the same person?
Yes, Tanner McConnell. Yes.
Okay.
Her maiden name is Tanner.
All right. Tell us a little bit about Carrie. I understand that she's a pharmaceutical tech.
No.
No, that's a misunderstanding.
She's an executive, a pharmaceutical executive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and she's a PhD, so she's Dr. Tanner.
Have you ever had a chance to meet with her, speak with her?
So what we've spoken, and we Facebook back and forth, and she's aware that we're doing the show tonight, and we've set up a couple of times to meet in person. And this past time, December 4th, I had a UTI and I wasn't able to meet with her. And we were supposed to meet here in New York, and I was really looking forward to it. And now we're scheduled to meet at UCLA during Mark Scotch's next Oregon Trail bike ride.
Carrie says hello, by the way.
Oh, good.
What motivated Carrie to donate to you? I heard something about a TED talk that Ned Brooks gave. Can you tell us about that?
I think she had heard Ned Brooks's TED talk. Of course, he's the founder of NKDO. And I think she had spoken with him and also with Joe Sinecor, who is a employee or board member, top ranking official at NKR. And he's also very helpful with NKDO. So I think she had spoken to both of them previously, and that she was motivated by the idea of being a non-directed donor in order to start a chain and help as many people as possible. And I think through her background in being a pharmacist and a researcher and knowing a great deal about all the drugs that we all take, that she wanted to help us go through this process, and she was willing to donate in order to help us. And I think that I was really lucky to get her kidney and to have her as my kidney mama. Apparently, she was slated to give to several other people prior to it ending up being mine. Oh. So I'm just ecstatically grateful. And yeah.
I'm sorry. Talk to us a little bit about the things that you and Ed and Terry have done together. I understand that you were on my friend Roxanne Watson's show. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did that show together. Roxanne is fabulous. Roxanne has single-handedly gotten 12,000 people to sign up through Live On New York, and more every day. And she has her table at the Palisades Mall, and she's done a book on getting her heart transplant and to honor the family that she got that from. And she's amazing, and she's been wonderful about having a number of other people on her show who I've suggested to her. She does a weekly show called Michael's Gifts every Wednesday morning, and she's an amazing asset to the world of transplant.
Okay. How did the transplant go? Would you consider it to be successful?
So my kidney function is amazingly good. And yet 2 days afterwards, I herniated. So apparently it's no one's fault. It just happens sometimes. So I have this huge lateral wall that's not really there anymore. And I look very lopsided, and it makes it hard to move as much as I would like to move. And it's frustrating to live with. I've seen a number of surgeons who think that I could put the kidney at risk by going through an ordeal of surgery. It would be a very lengthy, difficult surgery. And I just don't feel at this point that it's worth necessarily taking the risk. They want me to get clearance from pulmonology and cardiology, and I haven't been able to do that yet. And when I stand up, I have orthostatic tachycardia. It's called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So it's difficult for me to stand up. If I stand still, my blood pressure drops. But if I had it to do all over again, even knowing all of this, I would still opt to have a transplant.
Your friend Larry is in the chat saying what a wonderful coach you are.
Thank you, Larry.
Have you had any other challenges or complications since your kidney transplant? I understand the second year were pretty rough.
It's definitely rough. I feel better when my drug level is too low, but I know that I need to keep it higher, and it causes some shaking and some fogginess, and sometimes I just climb back into bed. And I'm grateful that I can work at home and make my own hours. So I started a group to try to move more, and for a while that was working for me. And now I feel like I'm more an admin of the group than a mover in the group. That group is called Move More with Friends, and sometimes I feel really guilty that I'm not moving as much as I could.
Okay. You mentioned something in your interview with Brenda about an epaulette match. And by the way, the link to your interview with Brenda is in the comments as well. Can you talk to us about what an epaulette match is and why it was important in your case? Okay,
so it wasn't done in my case, and Carrie and I are trying now to see what our epaulette match is. Our understanding is we matched on 5 out of 6 antigens, which is an older way of matching. The newer way of matching is through epaulette matching, and it's done at a molecular basis, and it's something that NKR is really, really encouraging. They had all the coaches meet with a professor from NYU, and we went through a 2-day program to understand epaulette matching. And there's a pilot study going on at Georgetown, and they are doing the epaulette match between Carrie and I as a favor to both of us, and to see how good a match we have.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your kidney advocacy experience. What is the National Kidney Donor Organization? What types of things do they do?
Okay, so NKDO, the National Kidney Donation Organization, is mostly there for the donor, as opposed to NKR, which is mostly there for the recipient, or pre-recipient. And what NKDO has right now are 60 ILDA trained donor mentors. So the ILDA training is extensive. It's independent living donor advocate certification. And then all of their donor mentors are themselves donors. And Mike Lolo is president of the group, and Leesa Emmett is the director, and Ned Brooks founded the group and is CEO, and Ellis is vice president. And collectively, with a number of other key players like Terry Theed, who came on to do the social media and publicity, and collectively these mentors help to walk potential donors through the process of becoming living kidney donors. And often the mentors themselves have gone through being a donor at the same site that the potential donor is trying to go through. So, for example, Kelly gave at UPenn, and she primarily works with potential donors at UPenn, and 7 of our sites have Donor Connect, which means that if they register for a microsite through these 7, they will go directly to NKDO and find a mentor within almost a couple of hours. That mentor will call them and explain to them what has to be done. And there's a number of questionnaires, first a shorter one, then a longer one, and then they'll send them or help them to get tested, blood tested. And it starts out easy, and then it gets a little harder and harder as they go through. And we now have a number of donors that have gone through the whole process and given because of the donor mentors that are on board. So it's very exciting. We've started doing a little bit of international donations. So we have somebody in Mexico who's testing to give at Keck through USC. University of Southern California, Keck has a center. And it's just all very, very exciting. Then on top of that, NKDO is a consortium for other groups. So there's a vegan group. There's a group that's going to be climbing to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro on March 10th and being at the summit on World Kidney Day. There's just a host of all kinds of other advocacy people. So Mark Scotch is a member. He's a donor, and he's a member. And Brenda did a was it Brenda? Somebody did.
Brenda did, yeah. And just so you know, Leesa, the links to his news story about his travels, that's right in the comments tonight too.
Oh, that's great. So I know that he talked to Tony for the cafe that Tony is the podcast host of, and that's in the comments. I saw that in the comments.
Yes, ma'am.
He also talked to Roxanne, and then I think he also talked to Brenda, right?
Yes.
So yeah, Mark's talked to everybody. He's absolutely amazing. I can't wait for his next ride. I was part of his last ride, and that's also housed within NKDO. So it's become this huge consortium for a lot of advocacy work. I know Mike Lolo was just in Georgia 2 days ago, I think on Wednesday, to do legislative work. We're working on getting incentives for living kidney donors through state legislation.
Okay. Let me ask, Leesa, you mentioned the microsite thing a couple of times. What is your specific role in the organization? What kinds of things do you do?
So for NKDO, I'm a team member. I help out pretty much. For NKR, I'm employed full-time as a microsite coach. So I have over 200 people that I am responsible for coaching from the time of educating them through kidneyadvocate.com, which I mentioned earlier, where I talk to them about the transplant sites, what each site offers, because sometimes it's possible that a different site would offer more and that would better serve their needs. And they don't know that because they haven't necessarily looked at all the different transplant centers. And then I talk to them about different videos. So NKR has videos, NKDO has videos, Harvey Meisel has videos. And then I talk to them about a number of really good books for looking at strategies. And then we get into the nitty gritty of the microsite. So my microsite follows a pattern similar to what Ellis used in his initial websites. And there's two sections. There's a top section and a bottom section. And the bottom section is typically the same, where it speaks to potential donors about the costs and about how to help this recipient, the pre-recipient, and help them to give a living kidney. But we're not necessarily doing a big ask for a kidney. We're doing a small ask. All we're asking is that whoever sees these microsites will share it as wide as they can. And I know right now with 1,200 microsites, there's a tremendous amount of competition. And then there's also added competition with the 100,000 people that are on the dialysis waiting list. And well, they're not waiting for dialysis. They're usually on dialysis waiting on the waiting list for a kidney. And there's so many different groups out there that are all helping people and using the same social media platforms to share. And again, the best way to share is probably through direct emails, because you actually know the people that you're emailing to, and the chances of them seeing your microsite is going to be better through emails. So the top section has four categories. So it has who am I, my interest, what happened to me, and how a kidney transplant will affect my life. And again, mine are the only ones that follow that structure. The other coaches feel that people are able to put up whatever they want. Although what I have found is to be most effective is to use this structure. So that's what I do. They know about the structure. They're welcome to use it. They can do what they want. So
Okay.
NKR gives us autonomy, and the client has autonomy as well. If they want to use whatever they think is going to work in their microsite, they can do that. But mine are all very structured. And I
Okay.
help per client to tell a compelling story. So my belief is that it's important to talk about why my life is worth saving and why each client's life is worth saving. So for example, there may be a hairdresser that believes that, along with me believing, that her compelling story is she's been a hairdresser for some 40 years. She has clients. Not only is she taking care of their hair, she's taking care of that whole person. She has a relationship with them similar to what I have with my hairdresser, where she knows me intimately. I tell her everything about me. Each time I come in, she's like, how did this go? And how did that go? And
Mhm.
she wants me to look my best and feel my best. And she's there to help me to do that. And if I have an event to go to, believe me, I'm in her chair that afternoon saying, help me with this. And I would do anything to save her life. It just, sharing her story and finding someone who comes forward to give her a kidney. And the hairdresser I'm thinking of that I'm a coach for has four young grandchildren and a relatively young daughter, and really needs to be around for them. And not only is she a hairdresser, but she's also a trap neuter release person that has helped felines in her neighborhood. So in order for these cats to be taken care of and not have this litter of unwanted kittens that are going to freeze in the snow, we need to help to find her a kidney.
Okay,
So
if I wanted to share her microsite, what's her name?
Linda Wegweiser.
Okay, thank you. Talk to us a little bit about the voucher program. What is that all about?
So NKR is an amazing organization. Garrett Hill has done a fabulous job setting up a voucher program. So what happens is, similar to Ed giving me a B positive on my behalf, his B positive went somewhere else. So anybody with a living kidney that is in good condition can give on behalf of anyone. They don't have to be in the same state. They don't have to know them. They don't have to be the right size. They don't have to be the right gender. And they certainly don't have to be a match. NKR takes care of all of that. They've got this fabulous computer system that's brand new, state of the art. It fills up an entire wall of their new building in Connecticut, and they can take any kidney that's in good shape and give it to the person that it best matches. And the person that they are giving on behalf of will get a voucher. And that voucher is an IOU. And it's not just an IOU. It's got every possible aspect of having legal documentation that that kidney is going to somebody, so that the person that they're giving on behalf of is guaranteed the best match possible for them within a short, reasonable time. Now, mine was same day. It's not always same day. It is same day when it can be. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. It rarely takes more than a couple of months. And they can find a person that has any kidney that will then go to the best person. The other advantage of a voucher system is, let's say that there's a couple where the person, let's say the wife is going to give on behalf of her husband, and she needs to heal first so that when he gets his kidney, she can be his caregiver. If both of them are struggling at the same time, that's going to be difficult. So we let her heal first, and then he gets his a little bit after that. He gets the very best match possible, and she's able to be there completely healed, ready to take excellent care of her spouse. So
one of the things that I was particularly impressed by was some of the protections that are offered through that program. Can you talk a little bit about the Kidney for Life initiative? What is that all about?
So that's two separate things.
Okay.
Right? So Kidney for Life is more about the uplet matching. That if we get the best match possible through uplet matching, that kidney should theoretically last that person their entire life. And not only will it last them their entire life, but they will need the least amount of medicine in order to prevent rejection as possible. So, for example, some people I know are taking 4 or 5 milligrams of tacrolimus in the morning and again at night. I take 1 milligram in the morning and again at night because I have such a great match. And each year or each couple of months, that's gone down. So initially I needed a little bit more, and now I need very little. And we even tried a half in the morning and 1 at night and found that it was just like a little too low. So we went back to the 1 and 1. But it's a great match. So it should last me for the rest of my life. That's what they're talking about when they talk about Kidney for Life. When they
so in other words, the organization just doesn't help people get matches. It stays with your recipient and your donor afterwards as well. Is that a fair statement?
Can you make that again, please?
You don't give up on people that donate. You stay with them after the donation. You stay with the recipient after the donation. It doesn't just stop once the kidney's received. That's the point.
So, well, that's not the point of Kidney for Life. But
Okay.
I
Well,
think
what
it's
is the point?
a statement to say that we want to medically follow up with recipients and donors. That makes sense. As far as me coaching them, I typically coach them until they get a kidney. If they want to stay in touch with me afterwards, that's fine. But my coaching has pretty much stopped. I think that the other thing you brought up though is the donor shield package, right? And
Yeah.
donor shield 3 years or maybe a year ago was 8 items. The newest video shows 12 items, and I think that there's additional protections in the works. So some of the things that get covered are lodging and hotels, and if a person cannot work for a period of time, that will be paid for. And if they need any kind of medical care afterwards, that's covered. It's a whole package of protections that's given to the donor. And I think that the donor mentors really talk more about this than we do as coaches for people that are pre-recipients working on a microsite, working on finding a kidney. So there is a video. Okay, so when you go to box 3, that's NKR. And when you go to box 4 on kidneyadvocate.com, those are the NKR videos. And you click on video, and then you go down to row 5 and you go into the 5th one. So it's kind of like number 25. And that's the UPenn microsite seminar. And there's a huge portion of that talks about the 12 components of Donor Shield. It also talks about how to write a microsite and how to share a microsite. So when I'm using kidneyadvocate.com, I'm explaining the different videos to people.
All right. Can you tell us what the difference is between NKR and NKDO?
Right.
It's my understanding that if you know your donor, you'll be referred to NKDO. If you don't, you go to NKRs. Is that a correct distinction?
No. Well, NKR is really there for the recipient and for doing the matching. NKDO is really there to coach the donors. Okay. So if you don't know who your donor is, the way the donor is going to interact with you is going to be different. So let's say that somebody has a microsite and they've shared it, and now somebody's interested in donating for them, but they don't know each other. So the potential donor is going to click on the box of the microsite that says register to donate for Brett. Let's talk about Brett Ashley.
Okay.
And so we want them to click on that. But if they know Brett's going to tell them, or if they contact Brett's going to explain to them that the best way to get to a donor mentor is by clicking on the form on NKDO, because then they will get immediately to a donor mentor. If all they do is click on the microsite, they're going to be talking to a transplant coordinator who is often very overworked and does not necessarily tell them that they can get a donor mentor through NKDO. We would like to see every transplant site utilize Donor Connect, because then all donors would end up with a donor mentor. But that's not the reality. The reality is only 35 of your 250 sites even have microsites. I don't know what somebody at an NKR without a microsite even does in order to have their their potential donor talk to somebody at NKDO. It's almost impossible unless the person that they're talking to knows that NKDO exists. Right now, NKDO only has 1,000 members. That's ludicrous. I would think that every one of the people that have a microsite, all 1,200, would want to be a member of NKDO. I would think that all of their family, their transplant coordinators, their transplant center people would want to join NKDO. It's free. We are providing an amazing service of having donor mentors that all we want is for people to join. It doesn't cost them a dime, and yet it seems to be a very slow process to get people to even know who they are, who we are.
Okay. I want to ask you about your new initiative with the Toastmasters group and how they're involved in organ donation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'm sorry, I was reading the chat, which I can't even see from back here.
It's a little small, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just blind. But what was your question?
My question was, you started a recent initiative with the Toastmasters group for kidney patients. I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, please, and how you're involved in that and what the goal is, that sort of thing.
Okay, so let me talk about my involvement in Toastmasters first.
Fine.
Okay, so I don't even know how I got to Toastmasters. I think what happened was that I was part of an improv group that was run by Sol Miranda, who's a wonderful actress and lives locally. And through a group called Embark, Sol was running improv, and I was invited by a number of friends to go and participate, and I loved it. And one night we were at our we had just finished improv, and these two women walked in, Sarah and Anne Marie, who have just become wonderful friends. They walked into our space to see if it would be suitable for a Toastmasters meeting, and I am gregarious and talked to them about what they were doing and what Toastmasters was, and they invited me to an open house. And that was when I was looking for my kidney. And my first speech at Toastmasters was unprepared. And I spoke for 9 minutes about trying to find a kidney donor. And since then, my speech has gotten a lot better. However, since that time, I went through the ordeal of getting my kidney. And then when I was feeling better, I returned to the group and had a very hard time telling my story without a whole lot of tears and shaking and choking up. And since then, I've refined that because I joined Toastmasters 15 months ago and have practiced speeches and gotten more comfortable. So my belief is that other people who either need a kidney, have gotten a kidney, want to be a kidney donor, have become a donor, are friends and families of people on either side, or for whatever reason are part of the kidney community, need to learn the same kinds of techniques that I've learned in order to be better speakers. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the best speaker by any means, but that's not the point. The point is not to be the best. The point is to be comfortable enough to tell your story to a camera, to an audience, to a group of people that are gathered at an event, to the House of Representatives or Congress in order to enact legislation that's going to get us to the point of having enough living kidney donors to be able to take care of the 100,000 people who are on this waiting list. So if you are in the same kind of position that I am, where you're not necessarily yet a comfortable speaker, but you would like to be a better speaker, this is a good group for you to become active with. So I am part of the Peekskill Toastmasters Club, and we have meetings every 2 weeks and then a board meeting once a month. And I am forming a separate group just for people in the kidney community. And if you would like to join, we have an informational meeting on the 6th of February, a demo meeting on the 20th of February, and the first meeting on the 6th of March in time for Kidney Month. So please contact me at whatever sites Jim gives you and let me know that you're interested in learning to tell your story and in hanging out with me twice a month, telling kidney stories and sharing your experiences. And we're calling this Kidney Stories Speech Club, I think. And it would be KISS for Kidney Stories Speech. So it's KISS, and there is a an email address, which is kidneystoriestm@gmail.com. And there's a group of people from District 46 that I owe everything to that are helping me to put this together. So if you'd like to tell your story, I would love to hear it.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you're running a couple of groups on Facebook as part of your advocacy, the Move More with Friends group and also the Kidney Stories group. Can you talk to us about each of these groups and why you formed them?
So I formed Move More with Friends because at the time I was actually using a rollator, which is kind of like a walker, and I was determined to stop using it and to be able to walk more. And the group really helped me to do that. And I also miss yoga tremendously. So we've been having yoga, and we have a lot of other sorts of aspects to the group. Whatever way you would like to move more is part of being in the group. And eating better, sleeping better, feeling better, it all works collectively. There's 6,100 members of the group. We've been here since April 20th of 2020 when my gym first closed. So I was going to a wellness gym at the hospital near me, and I just needed to keep moving in order to keep living. And if you're interested in moving more, that's a great group for you. If you want to tell your kidney stories, I wanted to get kidney stories off of my personal feed, although there is some purpose in having it on my personal feed as well, and into a group of its own. And as of yesterday, we now have 500 members of the Kidney Stories group, and we're constantly sharing. And Jim, you've been a wonderful asset to both groups. I really appreciate your help with both groups because it is a lot of work. I'm totally in admiration of the fact that you've got 90 Facebook groups of your own that I'm a member of many of. And thank you for asking that.
Not a problem at all. I read someplace that you're in the process of writing a book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that hasn't really taken off yet. I do belong to a writers group, and we meet on Saturdays, and Barb Morrison, who wrote a welfare mother's memoir, leads our group. And there are a number of people in the group who are writers. And I love being part of the group, and I'm doing a little writing with her. But the book really hasn't taken off yet, although it's a dream of mine. I would love to do what Roxanne did. She had someone write the book with her or for her or collectively. That would be great. If you're interested in writing my book, I'd be interested in talking about that.
Okay. All right. We're in the home stretch here, Leesa. Is there anything that you would like to mention or say as a final statement before we conclude our talk tonight?
Well, I love doing these interviews. So if you're listening and you'd like me to be interviewed on another platform, I really do enjoy talking about what I do and the help that I've offered to my clients and how I can help you if you're in need. So at this point, I guess the thing to leave you with is right now we've only got 1,200 microsites, and there's 100,000 of you that are on the waiting list. So if you are one of the people that are on a waiting list at an NKR affiliated hospital that has a microsite, so there's 35 of those centers. And if you are one of those people and you don't have a microsite and you don't have a coach, or you have no clue of how to even go about doing that, please contact me and I'd be delighted to walk you through kidneyadvocate.com and talk to you about the centers that are near you and help you to get off the waiting list and to be moving towards finding your living kidney donor.
That's great, Leesa. I really appreciate you taking time. Thank you for giving us such detailed explanations and for trying to help out people that are seeking, and even after they found, continuing to help those people. I greatly appreciate you coming to speak with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, and you've been really important in the work and in the movement, and I really, it's a pleasure talking to you, Jim. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Much appreciated. You have a good night, Leesa. We'll talk soon.
You too, Jim, and thank you.
All right, so that's our show for tonight. Next week, Dr. Andrew Lazar is with us, and he's going to be talking about genetic testing and how it affects your diagnosis, how it affects your course of treatment, how it affects your medication, and how it gives doctors more of a precise look at these items rather than, how many times have you heard a kidney patient say, well, the doctors kind of think it's such and such, but they weren't really sure. This means that they're real sure about why your kidneys failed and what they need to do about it. So look forward to Dr. Lazar's interview next week. You guys have a good week. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.